Hi, my name is Barbie Enrico, and I'm here to welcome you to Pitch Tips Zoomcast, and where venture capitalist Fred Haney gives feedback to CEOs of startup companies to help them raise capital. Fred is an experienced venture capital fund manager, angel investor, entrepreneur, founder Monday Club, and author of The Fundable Startup, one of the best selling books about startup companies getting funded. So let's find out what Fred has to say to today's CEO.
Hi, and welcome to the Pitch Tips Zoomcast program, where we try to help an entrepreneur improve his chances of getting funded, and we hope that we can help you improve your chances of getting funded too, because you can be a fly on the wall here in a conversation between the venture capitalist, that would be me, and an entrepreneur. Today, our entrepreneur is Lucas Judice. He's the CEO of Freatze. It's an interesting company using artificial intelligence to solve an interesting problem. We'll hear more from him in just a second. But first, I want to give you the basic idea here. Lucas is going to go through a short version of his pitch deck, and I'll try and give him some feedback and see if I can find ways that he can focus the message, make it more specific, make it more the kind of thing that will give him a pretty good chance of separating an investor from a check. That's what it's all about here. That's what we're trying to do. So again, you can pretend you're a fly on the wall in a conversation between a VC and an entrepreneur. With that, let's introduce Lucas Judice. Lucas, why don't you take a second? Give us a little one-sentence description of what Freatze is about, and then tell us a little about your personal background, how you got involved, and what it all means to you. And before you start, let me congratulate you on your shirt. We didn't plan it this way, and they're probably not quite identical, but they're awful close.
That's nice. Well, Fred, thank you for inviting me. It's a great opportunity. Yes, my name is Lucas, as you mentioned, and I'm the CEO of Freatze. And I've been a lawyer. Actually, I worked as a lawyer for, let's say, 15 years, which has nothing to do with statistics, which is the base of our company right now. But it's been amazing to see how that life kind of professional transaction from our transition actually from law to being an entrepreneur. It's pretty amazing, actually. A lot of challenges, but of course, it's pretty great to see the company growing as we have been growing for the past 3 years in our test market, which was Brazil, and now expanding to the US. And Freatze provides growth recommendations to food service operators based on AI-driven analysis of very extensive customer opinion or feedback. That's basically what we do at Freatze, and will be my pleasure to explain more in detail as we start.
Great. Just in addition to my background, I ran a large venture capital fund. I've been involved with hundreds of startups. I've been a co-founder of 6 companies myself, and I've had 16 very nice exits. So I'm trying to bring all that experience together here. It is contained in a book called The Fundable Startup, How Disruptive Companies Attract Capital. You can find that on Amazon, and in just a matter of weeks, I think, there will also be an audio book version of that, which I narrated myself. It's being published by Blackstone Publishers. One other background information, so you'll understand that my thought process here. When you're in the venture capital business, you learn that in order to manage time, you have to learn to say no fast. The worst thing you can do as a venture capitalist is get real excited about every deal you see, because you see 100 every month. If you get real excited about every one and spend a couple days on every one, you just don't have time to go to board meetings and answer phone calls and do all the things you have to do. So the trick is it's kind of a negative thought process, but it's important for you to understand this. you got to think right away, well, if this company is going to fail, why would it fail? What are the showstopper issues here? What are the things that could keep this company from being successful? So you try to identify those, make a list, and then you go through each one and you say, well, can I get over this? Is there a way to work around it? Maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Maybe I can live with it. And if you can't either fix it or live with it, then maybe it becomes a reason for not making the investment in the first place. So that's kind of the mentality here, and I'll try and exhibit some of that as we go. With that, Lucas, why don't you fire up your screen share and tell us about your company?
Okay. Yep. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Oh, you probably want to go into play mode. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So as I said, Freatze provides growth recommendations to the food service operators based on AI analysis of an extensive customer feedback. And that statement will make more sense as I go over these slides, but it all starts with the main problem, which is business owners, specifically restaurant owners, they are unsure on how they can get more retention, more recurrency, more revenue, and of course, they don't necessarily know their weaknesses and strengths. And part of that uncertainty is because it's really hard to get usable data and even harder to get usable data directly from consumers. A usable data has to have a really good sample size, many consumers providing data. Those many consumers, they have to provide so many data points, which is the depth component of the data set. And the consumers, they have to be the right consumers. So we have quality in that sample. And with size, quality, and depth, we have a reliable data. And the solution that Freatze provides is one, we have this very unique data collection way. Our data collection is profitable to the clients, to the restaurants. And the more surveys they hire, the more profit, the more revenue they'll have while data collecting. And that is a great incentive to get a larger sample size. So the restaurant owners will not hire 1, 2, 3 customers per month to get their feedback, but now they'll hire 50, 60 different consumers per month to get their feedback. So again, large sample size. And then with Freatze, each consumer will provide at least 90 data points per survey. So that's the depth as well. And then we have this matchmaking that will get quality consumers, meaning the right consumers for the right location. So we have a really powerful and important data set. But the data by itself, even though it's important and a pretty good data, doesn't do anything by itself. And as we have so much data, it would be kind of impossible to have a human going through 10,000 hours of information and trying to make sense of it all. So we have this artificial intelligence, which is the second component of our solution, an algorithm that will read that 10,000 hours of information and knowledge in under 10 seconds and provide a automated plan of action. Do this, do not do that. And the outcome of that, the outcome of that artificial intelligence is more customer satisfaction, retention, and of course, revenue growth. And the way we do it, we start with the data collection process, of course. So we offer 100% up to 100% in cashback in exchange for the consumer's opinion. We have done this in many, many restaurants, over 1,000 restaurants in Brazil. And as I said, we're expanding to the US. 4 steps for the consumers. First, he'll subscribe. It's free to subscribe, freatze.com. And then he or she will be able to see so many options in the screen, and they'll reserve that cashback voucher, go to the restaurant within 3 days, tell us their feedback of how it went, the experience overall. And then as soon as that survey is approved, they'll get up to 100% in cashback. On average, we reimburse the average meal. So let's say they go to, I don't know, California Pizza Kitchen, which has a $30 average spend. That's whatever, that's the same amount that we'll reimburse for them. So we start, as I said, with the data collection, and then we get that data, we apply that data through our artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence will, as I said before, give exactly the best course of action for that business owner to increase their revenues, right? We'll say, okay, do not pay attention to 250 different indicators or metrics. Just pay attention to those, let's say 5, 6, 7 metrics. And those 7 metrics will have 80% impact in whatever you are trying to do. Either if you are trying to wow your customer, or to retain your customer or to have a higher recurrency rate. So whatever the main outcome is as the business owner, we'll be able to provide that shortcut, let's call it this way, to have those restaurant owners increase their connection with their consumer base. Okay. And of course, the results are being amazing. Our clients in Brazil, again, the test market, they see an average of 24% increase on their revenues. And we have great clients like Burger King, Outback, Popeye, Subway, Domino's Pizza, Pizza Hut, and so many other clients in Brazil. And all of this we are bringing to the US, and hopefully we'll be able to do way more than we've been doing in Brazil as well. Thank you very much, Fred.
Okay, good job. Thank you. Lucas, where's the US company going to be located?
So it's headquartered in Delaware, right? And then this Delaware entity owns 100% of the Brazilian operation. But I live in LA.
Okay, so
yeah.
So it's incorporated in Delaware.
Yes, exactly.
But the location of the management team will be Los Angeles.
Yeah, the first location, let's say LA, but of course we intend to serve many states.
Sure. Okay, well, good job. You covered a lot of ground there in a good way. Just a general comment about the style of your slides. Your slides are don't have a lot of words on them. You know, they don't have a lot of content, and that's fine. I mean, you don't want people reading sentences and paragraphs when you're going through something like this. But I'd say they may be a little on the skinny side in terms of content. Okay. And here's a way to think about it. There's a question about whether or not a pitch deck should stand by itself. You know, should I be able to understand the business if you just email me the pitch deck and I read through it and I don't have you there to explain? This is the kind of pitch deck that requires a lot of explanation. I mean, it needs you in the room to tell me about it. And that's okay. I mean, that's the idea here. You're trying to do this in situations where you're presenting to investors. But there are a lot of times when you may not be in the room. I mean, you send me a pitch deck, for example, wondering about participating in Monday Club. Well, I have to read through the pitch deck and learn enough to make a decision. The other thing that happens is an investor like a venture capitalist might look at your pitch deck, put it in the drawer, pull it out 2 weeks later, and even if he heard you explain it, he might not remember all the things you said. The other thing, especially with VCs and to some extent with angels, is if they see something they like, they'll send it to their partners or their buddies. And then again, you're not there in the room. So there's some kind of a balance that needs to be achieved. And I don't like pitch decks that, where I have to read sentences. I'd rather just see bullets. I also don't like pitch decks that are just all full of pictures that don't say anything to me. So, I mean, pictures are okay if they augment the message, but they're not okay if they just take up space and don't convey any real information. I'll let you feed back there. I know you've thought about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I have done personally 30 investments, so I have been on the other side as well. And for me, it's always now as an entrepreneur, it's always challenging to understand which deck should I send. Should I send the longer version of the deck or the shorter version? And then, of course, if we have some background, some information about the investor's background, that would be helpful. And but I mean, that's what it is. We have to be able to provide as much information, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, to those we're talking to, right? And so my question to you would be, if I have no idea if the investor likes a shorter version or a longer one, which one should I send? Should I go with the longer and more explanatory, or the shorter one? And before you answer, one thing that I've been doing lately is that with the deck, I send a link to a video in which I pitch the deck. So so that my answer his or her doubts as well.
Well, yeah, you may be killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. I mean, you know, what investors want is the answers to their questions. I mean, the question and the questions. One of the problems with a lot of pitch decks is companies get the outlines that they say, yeah, you want to know what's our product, what's the market, what problem are we solving, how are we solving it, do we have patents, who's the management team, and they go through and they kind of fill in the blanks, and that's not really what investors want to hear. I mean, for example, one thing you really didn't talk about, I was going to bring this up, but in this context, it maybe makes sense, is competition. And the question investors are asking is not who's your competition, you know, list them off, or a matrix that says, well, we have these features and they have those features. That's not the question. The question is, how's this problem being solved today? What other solutions might be available? What is the dynamic of competition within the industry? You know, who are the other guys? Are they using AI or not using AI? Are they doing focus groups or something else? The little matrices, the 2x2 matrices are kind of useful sometimes for that. But the real question is not just who are your competitors, it's what's the dynamic? What's your strategy for positioning yourself within that industry? And how are you going to go about that? So that's kind of a long way of saying you probably want to say more rather than less. I mean, investors want the information. Same token here, by the way, I was going to really compliment you on the way you interacted with the video. I thought that was a very powerful, I mean, I need you in the room to do that. But I think the interplay between the video and your narrative was great. I mean, I like that a lot. And again, if you're in the room, that's great. And you say you have kind of a narrated version of something like that. That's probably a good tool.
And also, I have another question. So let's say, again, I don't know the investor, and I have this opportunity that I have no idea if that opportunity to talk to this investor will be a 10 minutes opportunity, or maybe 15, or maybe 30, or maybe an hour. But I have to send my message across, right? I have to get my message across. And should I mainly be a talker, right? And explain the product and explain within that 10 or 15 minutes window and explain as much as I can, or be more maybe talk less and be more open to dialogue. So I'm actually more listening, and I'm talking about the first interaction, right? The first moment that I'm talking to the investor. Or again, should I be more open to dialogue? So in my mind is like, if I don't explain what I do, what I have, and then I mean, maybe he doesn't have enough knowledge in terms of what I do to have that dialogue. But at the same point, I don't want to take only that 15 minutes that I have and only be the one talking. I want to have this exchange as well. So that's always a challenge as well. Okay, what should I do? Should I talk more or less?
My suggestion is to plan your time, and you know, meetings are either 2 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes. It's somewhere in there. I mean, if you sit down, if you get along far enough with a venture capitalist, for example, they're not going to have you come into their offices for a 15-minute meeting. I mean, if you get invited into a venture capitalist office, you're probably going to be there for 45 minutes. And these guys aren't bashful. you know, if they want to ask a question, they'll ask a question. So I think what you do is take your best shot at knowing what is important to them, knowing what information they're looking for, you know, what constitutes a good business plan, what constitutes a good pitch deck, what questions do they want answered. Take your best shot at it. If they want to interrupt you and take you off someplace else, fine, go with it. You know, they can do that. I think it's important to, with investors, to make things very specific. It's important to remember, if I'm an investor sitting here listening to a pitch, I'm getting kind of one word at a time, one sentence at a time. And if it doesn't register you, if it doesn't mean something to me, you've wasted the words. You know, I get lost. And the worst mistake that companies make sometimes is, and I see it a lot, and it's kind of surprising. You might see, I see 7 or 8 beautiful slides, lots of graphics, and I get to slide number 8 or 9, and I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, "What do you guys do? You haven't, yeah, I don't have a real understanding, a concrete understanding of what you do. Exactly what problem are you solving? Exactly what is your solution? How does it work? Why does it work? I mean, help me understand exactly what's going on." So it's very important to be specific. And along those lines, I wanted to go back. You don't have to put the slide up, but I wanted to go back to your solution slide, because that wasn't giving me enough to really kind of grab a hold and feel like I came away with a good solution, with a good understanding of how you're going about it, how you're solving the problem. You might talk to that for a minute.
Okay. Do you want me to go back to
Sure,
this one?
sure. If it's easy to pull it back up.
Yeah, it should be. I was in a different screen here, but now I'm sharing. Okay, can you see?
Yep.
So that's the solution slide.
Yeah. Again, there's not much content on the slide. I mean, if I look at the slide, it's not telling me much. But help me understand in a little more detail what.
Okay.
How's this working? How are you solving the problem?
Okay. So again, to understand better the solution, I'll just go back to the, let's say, main problem, which is how hard it is to get usable data and usable data from consumers. And as I mentioned, the usable data, it has to have a good sample size, quality of the sample, depth of the sample, and then the data has to be reliable. So with that in mind, the solution would be, okay, I have that powerful data set, and that powerful data set with size, depth, quality, and reliability, you cannot find that anywhere else, right? And then, of course, when I have the longer kind of version of the slides, I have one slide showing, okay, if you want data from consumers, where do you go as a business owner? So you can go to market research companies. That's too expensive. You don't have enough sample size, so you don't have a good size. If you go to Yelp or Google, that's public. You don't have quality of the reviews. You don't have depth as well, because you have only 1, 2, 3 data points collected per consumer. And that's not usable at all, because I mean, you have so many other flaws as well. Or you can go to mystery shopping companies, which is very inaccurate, and you don't have depth or as well sample size. So again, in the longer version, I'm kind of comparing what's out there in the market, and then I bring the solution. Oh, by the way, our solution, we have a pretty powerful data set that you cannot find anywhere else, right? Profitable to the clients, meaning the restaurants, while they're collecting, they're making money. And then because of the profitability component, the restaurant owners, they are more likely to hire more people to provide the surveys, and that's the size the size, right? So now I'm getting 50, 60 different consumers per month per location, and that will give me depth and quality as well, as I mentioned before, because we have this matchmaking, sending the right consumers to the right place. So the first solution would be the data set. But again, even if I have a pretty good data set, if I don't know how to use that data set, if I don't know how to read, or if I have time or knowledge to make sense of that data as a person, I need a computer or an artificial intelligence or algorithm to read that for me. So that's the second part of the solution, which is not only having a really good data set, but also having this algorithm reading 10,000 hours of information in under 10 seconds and making sense of that data using AI, machine learning, neural networks, sentiment analysis, predictive analysis, descriptive analysis, anyways, all the technology that we built. And that technology has a very low error margin. It's basically a superhuman, or of course a robot or AI, that does not forget one comment that was provided, does not forget one rating that was given, and will cross-analyze everything. And after cross-analyze everything, and when I say everything, over 250 metrics from over 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 different consumers, and we'll just spit, let's say, one page, one document saying, okay, restaurant owner, forget about 245 items that you have to pay attention at some point. Now your pain points are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pay attention to those 5 points, and then you'll succeed, or you have 80% higher chance of succeeding in your relationship to your clients.
Again, I think it's important to understand the AI, and I've got some AI background, but I understand probably some of what's going on there, but somehow you've got to make it concrete for your audience.
Okay.
Is there an analogy, for example? I mean, if you were just a person, what would your thought process be? Or do you want to be able to come back and say, well, look, out of all the feedback we got, 72% of the people said their fork was dirty. So you know that's something you need to work on. Is that the kind of thing you're doing? Are you looking for repetition and volume and themes?
Yeah.
Stuff that keeps coming up. Try and take the AI out of it for a minute and tell me what you'd be doing if you were just solving it as a person.
Okay, so we are looking to understand the repetition, what's happening, what's not happening, but mainly we're looking at the correlation and causation between what's happening and the wow factor, or how likely they are to return. So even though if I'm looking only to what's happening in terms of, oh, the fork's dirty, or the bathroom is dirty, or I'm taking too long to sit to be seated, those are metrics that I can rank the best one and the worst one, right? That would be kind of, let's say, business intelligence. But, and even though we do provide that as well, we are also providing an extra step, right? Okay, even though the fork is dirty, is this what's driving my revenue down? Or is it that the waiters are not being friendly enough, and then they're being rude at some point? So we are kind of creating, as I said, this causation, correlation, and history.
Oh,
Yeah, that makes sense.
correlation is probably a good word. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the way you just said it. It's not just how many people had a dirty fork, it's how many decided not to go back because they had a dirty fork.
Exactly.
But see, you want to say that. You want to convey that. And
Okay.
this slide is a perfect example of a slide that is useless without you there to slide the slider and provide the feedback. I think you really want to think about that a little bit. I mean, I know you have, and you have different versions of this, but there's some argument that says, you know, slides should, at least to some extent, be a little self-explanatory. I mean, one way to do that with a slide like this would be to put a headline on it.
Okay.
You know, put a headline that kind of captures the essence of what you're trying to convey to me.
Okay. Yeah, Just taking notes. Yeah, but that makes sense. So again, in the other longer version of these slides, I have another slide showing some examples of how they are using the data and some outcomes that our clients are getting. So that helps as well to understand, but I get your point and I agree with that. It's more like, how do I convey my message without being too technical, but showing the results, right? Or showing, yeah.
Yeah, the use of headline, like I said, can help with this issue. I mean, it doesn't completely make a slide deck self-explanatory, but it can take a chart like this where I look at it and I just throw my hands up and say I have no clue what the message here, what the message is. But if you give me the right headline, maybe at least I uh, come away with the right message.
Okay.
But Lucas, we should probably start to wrap up a little bit. Um, we've covered several points. Let me ask you: do you have a specific question I can help you with? Specific things that you're struggling with?
No, well, I think it's more, in my opinion, at least the experience that I'm having now. And we have had three rounds in Brazil of investment. And in Brazil, the business is pretty successful. We grew, first year, we grew 47% month over month. Second year, we grew 2.3x in revenue. Third year, we were supposed to grow at least 3x as well, but and then pandemic came. And so, we do have this, let's say, somewhat experience from whatever we had in Brazil. And we are using that assumption, that traction that I have in Brazil and all the financial units that we have in Brazil, and not necessarily replicating everything here, but we are using that lessons that we had as a starting point, right? So for example, I have this user acquisition, and in Brazil, I pay 8 cents of dollar to get one subscribed user. And for each restaurant, we spend $47 to acquire that restaurant as a client. So I'm getting that financial unit and bringing to the US and think, okay, I'm sure that in the US, I'm not going to be spending only 8 cents of dollar to subscribe for each subscribed user. Let's consider that I'll be spending $3.60. And then the same for the restaurant. I'm not going to consider $47, but I'm considering 1,500. So basically, I'm getting all those assumptions from Brazil and bringing to the US. And they're pretty consistent, proven, validated. So my question would be, how strong, in your opinion, that traction that we have in Brazil is during this fundraising process? Because I know it's a different country, but at the end of the day, restaurants are restaurants anywhere. You need client, you need recurrency, you need retention. So yeah, that would be my main question.
I think it's important. I mean, I would incorporate it. I would, if you can have a slide that kind of captures that experience, if it takes two, that's okay. And here's why I think it's important. I mean, if you read my book, The Fundable Startup, you'll see that one of the things a company can do to greatly increase its chances of getting funded is to get market traction. You go out and you get customers, you provide your service, you get happy feedback, you get repeat customers, you get more. What you've done is you've demonstrated that your idea works. You've demonstrated that people will buy it. You've demonstrated that you know what you're doing and you know how to run a business and you know how to meet your objectives and make things happen. And you've taken a lot of risk out. Because what investors don't like is when companies come with an idea and they're looking for money, but we don't know if the product works. We don't know if it can be built. We don't know if it can be manufactured for the price that we think. We don't know if anybody will buy it. We don't know how big the market is. We don't know how to get it to market or how that's going to work. There's just all this risk, and that's what investors absolutely don't want. They don't want to have to accept all that risk at once. So if you can go the other path and get market traction, get happy customers, demonstrate that the whole thing works, including the business model. Now the only risk the investor really has is the risk of scaling it out.
Yep.
So now if we pour a bunch of money into this thing, can we scale it up into a successful national or international business? So I would say yes, play that up a lot.
Okay, interesting.
It's important.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, let's wrap up. Lucas, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a good idea, good presentation. I wish you every success as you enter the U.S. market. I hope the dialogue helped you a little bit. If you're in the audience and you've been listening, we hope there's some lessons learned here and that you'll be able to improve your chances of getting your startup funded. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we hope to see you next time. The channel is getting lots of new content. We're constantly adding these pitch tips programs. We're also adding presentations from Monday Club. So come back frequently and check out the content. Also, there's a lot of content from the Fundable Startup, and it's there to try and help startups be successful. Thanks for participating.
Awesome. And thank you for inviting again. And congratulations for the pitch tips.
Thanks much.
Thank you.